Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pixelists podcast, the podcast about all the nerdy things we love and enjoy. As always, right. I'm your host, Will. That's your co-host, or that's my co-host, Blake. And today we're here to talk about some Critical Role.
I'm a man of the people, you know?
That's right. So
I need to stop, I get so excited in the intro, I need to stop interrupting you because you're like, what's up? And I'm like, hey!
No.
And you're like, all right, hang on, I'm trying to say who we are and what we're doing.
No, don't do that. Keep going. I like it. The more energy, the better.
I'm just like screaming into the microphone. You're like, okay, that actually is too much. So, what is up, my man? How's it going?
It's going good, man. We're recording this one's at a not really a typical time for us, so I'm just kind of unwinding at the end of toward the end of my day today.
Yeah, it's the end of the day. So we have about as long as it takes for like my daughter to like claw her way into my office.
Perfect.
So yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm doing well. You know, it's kind of been, I don't need to tell you this, you know it, but we've had a rainy couple of last days, and that's like my favorite type of vibe and weather. So I've been enjoying it. How about yourself?
Nice. I've liked the weather, but I've had a little bit of vertigo, unfortunately. So it kind of makes a lot of things difficult. But I'm here, and I'm excited to talk some Critical Role. I feel like we got some other programming too. We got Rings of Power, which I think we're going to record at some point this week.
Yeah.
I guess that's it, actually.
at least
all we got. We're out of tricks at that point. So I know at some point my wife and I will watch She-Hulk, but obviously, like whatever video we would do would be long, out of time.
I for what it's worth, and for any of y'all that watched it as well, I guess maybe I'm sure no one's going to comment about She-Hulk, but for anyone that did watch it, I would like to hear your thoughts, maybe in the comments, maybe drop a spoiler warning or something. But I actually enjoyed it, so I would recommend that y'all do watch it. And
what I've learned is that there's a lot of people who are mad about She-Hulk. It kind of kills my vibe for like wanting to watch it. I'm like, I don't know, people are seem real pissed off about She-Hulk.
I mean,
and Rings of Power. There's just a group of people out there who are getting pretty. Hey, for our listeners, maybe a little bit of you know, we all get a little passionate about things we care about, you know, the MCU, Lord of the Rings, you know, what have you.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It feels like we're getting a little bit into the territory of maybe spending a little bit too much time getting angry. You know, I'm kind of like and this is how little time I have too much time because I watched like a 30-minute video today of someone who was so angry about Rings of Power. And I was like, at some point I was like, bro, maybe you just need to like not watch it. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I guess maybe we could talk about, I was about to dive further on that, but I guess since we're doing an episode, remember that, because I want to ask you about like what that video was criticizing. Not that it definitely has its flaws for sure. But anyway,
I love, we never did an official video on it. It's coming. I enjoyed Witcher 2, but it's not a good show, you know? I'm the first one to say that. So
I feel like the Witcher 2 video is coming at some point. So I want to save my thoughts. But yeah, it's not like not an award-winning show, you know?
What do you say? How long are you going to save these thoughts for? Like, I feel like my friend and we've never had a conversation about this show because we keep saving it for the podcast. Like, it's going to be season 4. Well, it'll probably be canceled by then, honestly.
Don't you dare say that.
6 seasons in a movie.
That's right.
But yeah, it's not going to win any awards, but it's like the movie The Rundown fun. With The Rock.
That's a great movie.
I mean,
it's a fun movie. It's a fun movie.
It is a fun movie to watch one time.
No, I've watched that one a few times. Like growing up.
Oh my gosh.
There's some movies that are like, hey, that is a piece of art, and then there's some things that are just like fun, like a popcorn movie, you know?
Blue Streak.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with those. There's room for both things to exist.
Big Mama's House. Why am I stuck on Martin Lawrence movies?
I don't know.
There was a phase in my life where that's just all I watched. So,
look, Blue Streak was great, though.
It was.
I wonder if it still holds up.
You're right, though, because it's a great question, because there are some things that you watch that you loved as a kid, and you're kind of like,
Like they couldn't do that today.
I don't
Type
know
of
about
stuff.
that. Yeah. So, anyhow, what are we doing today? What is
Oh
this?
yeah, we've gone
What's this
everywhere.
video?
Today we're talking about Critical Role, specifically episode 38.
Yep.
38, A Dark Balance. Which, look at us, we're on top of things with the titles recently. And I guess let's just jump into our normal thing here before I get us off track again. But if you're new to us, we're the Pixelists. Hello. We like to recap every episode of Critical Role. Long content. Sometimes you need a quick refresher, especially before we're about to dive in and theorize and discuss. So we recap every episode before we jump into our normal podcast, and we cut that out, host that separately on YouTube for your convenience. So if you happen to find yourself on the recap video right now and you're interested in the meat and potatoes of our discussion, breaking down the episode, you can find that linked in the description box below. And with that out of the way, I guess we will jump into said recap. Which Blake, would you want to tackle the first half this week?
Yeah. So this is episode 38 of campaign 3 of Critical Role, and it was called A Dark Balance. And this episode opened up, it was a crazy episode. It opened up where the previous episode left off, which goes without saying. The episode opens up, though, where the party has just sundered the upside down sun tree, as I'm going to call it. And Delilah has screeched, and everything instantly went to white as each party member popped up back in this ritual room with Pike and Vexalia. Immediately, it's kind of like did it work? You know, what was this for nothing? Like, are we good to res our friend back? And Pike immediately puts her hand over Delilah, Laudna, and basically, to the dismay of the party, says, Delilah's still there. She's still there. She's still connected. Maybe be some truth to what Delilah said about how there's no way to actually separate them. Who knows? But Pike does say it's heavily reduced. And so they're kind of like, so? And Pike's like, okay, Vexalia, do you think I should do this? And Vex is like, let's do it. So she casts her resurrection spell. There's a little bit of a joke where Laudna's not breathing, and everyone's kind of like, "Oh no, she's always that way." Laudna pops up. Marisha comes back to the table. Such a sweet moment seeing Laura Bailey and Marisha hugging. And you come to find out that Vexalia has drawn her bow. There's two pale guards that are invisible in the room that have their guns pointed at Laudna. And they're very quickly like, quick, tell us something that only you would know that Delilah wouldn't know. Because they weren't sure if this was going to bring back Delilah or Laudna. She asks Imogen about her mother. It's kind of like oh, yay, it's Laudna. And Vex actually opens the door to reveal a troop of Pale Guard and Percy surrounding the house, ready to obliterate this thing if Delilah is the one who was to come back. Everyone kind of has their sweet moments, their welcome backs. Dude, I forgot like the most meaningful part of this resurrection, by the way. Before the resurrection worked, Matt actually had 3 people say a few words to Laudna. Orem, F.C.G, and Imogen all had these very meaningful requests to Laudna to come back to life, basically, with Orem rolling an 11, F.C.G rolling a natural 1, and Imogen rolling a 6. Pike fortunately rolled a 16, so the spell went through. But it'll be interesting to see if there's any repercussions from that at all. All that to say, they see this troop around the house. Vex is basically like, stand down, everything's okay. And Percy actually approaches the house and does have a conversation with Laudna. It's kind of like, hey, I'm sorry that, we're kind of the reason this happened to you. Vex says something similar also, and Pike also gives Laudna a hug, and a couple other people, including Fern, who, it's just so funny at the table when Fern gets this look, when Ashley Johnson gets this look, everyone just knows what she's thinking. She tries to sleight of hand, steal the holy symbol off of Pike. With a 17, fails, And Pike, there's kind of this funny moment of like, oh, it's stuck on me. Oops, my bad. And Pike encourages her to come back and visit her at the bakery in plain sight. The party decides to head to the Sun Tree. Laudna's like, I want to see it. This place where she died. She goes to the Sun Tree. She puts her face to the Sun Tree and feels the warmth of the Sun Tree. In fact, as she's doing this, she does something. You might have to help with me here, Will. She does like her form of dread, but it's different. I think she describes, maybe Matt describes, flowers or branches coming off of her.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if her patron has changed or what's happened there, but it was very different. So we'll have to talk about that in the episode. And then she actually is going to cast Find Familiar, and Pate, who gets dropped to the ground,
oh my gosh,
transforms into her familiar Pate DeRollo with this deep Cockney accent that is so good, and is like, I'm here and I'm so Randy. It's just so funny. Anyway, the party kind of they meet Pate and have kind of a fun moment with Pate, and from there, they're like, hey, we have to actually share some of this important information with Percy and Vex, the stuff that we figured out about Otahon and the stuff that they're dealing with. A dinner party is thrown. There's some cool details there where like the main course is going to come out, and Imogen tells Vex, hey, it's not lobster, is it? Because that's what she had the night she was killed. And Vex is like, be back in a moment. And then comes back and is like, I hope everyone loves potatoes.
Yeah.
So some cool details there. But and also even like Chetney asking about the clock tower that's in the castle and things like that, or in the city. All this to say, getting to the point, after dinner, the party basically sits down with Percy and Vex, and they say, hey, here's first things first. Someone's been stealing residuum. They basically say, we were aware that it was happening. We didn't know like exactly what was happening. We were fearful that maybe the Cerberus Assembly was involved, but because there's such a well-known front-facing institution, we didn't want to have to confront them because it's going to be very awkward. Party also mentions about the apogee solstice. And also additionally the Otahon Thule, and including what they saw on Ruidus with the telescope, which Percy confirms what we've been talking about in our videos, that this in fact seems to be some kind of divine gate. He pulls out some drawings or scribblings where that same lattice is described, talking about the divine gate between Exandria and the outer planes, and says basically like, yeah, that's what it sounds like. Percy takes his leave. Vexalia basically has a very kind of like warm final conversation points with the party, and is going to give Laudna a ring that she's been holding on her finger, and it is a ring of protection +1. And basically says, hey, take care of yourself. And it's sweet. This kind of parental responsibility they feel for Laudna. The party then decides to retreat to go to bed, and Laudna says, hey, I think I feel more comfortable sleeping at the Sun Tree. And the party, as one big happy family, they're like, all right, let's go. So they take their, I think Chetney calls them 50,000 thread count sheets and takes them out to the Sun Tree, where they go to bed. And then nothing bad ever happens after that.
That's right.
So,
the end.
So take us with the next half, my friend.
Yep. So for the second half, we pick up with, everyone camping around the Sun Tree. And F.C.G. Is casting Shared Dream on Imogen, which they've basically been doing ever since they got that spell, dating back to the airship. And because of that, F.C.G. now, along with Imogen, of course, finds themselves in this red storm nightmare that Imogen has had many times before. They are standing in the field near her house, typically where she always is, and the storm is already all around them. Usually, it's like approaching, but in this dream, it's already there.
Right.
Imogen can see this shadowed figure in front of her, like moving in the storm, but can't really tell what it is. She warns F.C.G, hey, Odahan might be here. Be careful. So she tries to catch up to the shape, and in so doing, she realizes that it is not the slender frame of Odahan, but rather it's this broader, more masculine shape. And it's hard to make out the details beyond that in the storm, but she sees the figure stop, kind of briefly turn around and look over its shoulder, and then boom, it's gone. And Imogen has seen this before, both with Bertrand and the Loomis twins, so she immediately worries like somebody might have just died, and she worries it's Eshteros. The storm then gets stronger, and so Imogen kind of picks up F.C.G and begins to will herself to fly, and not being tethered to the ground anymore, the both of them start to get basically jumbled all around by the storm. When they finally regain themselves, they look around to see where they are, and it's different. So they go back to she flies back to the ground, if you will, and it's like this cracked red ground, maroon kind of aesthetic everywhere around, and they look up and just see thousands and thousands of stars. And F.C.G's like, where are we? And Imogen says, we're on the moon. And then they kind of both wake up. So now the party has all gotten their long rest around the sun tree. And first things first, Fern actually tries to speak with the sun tree, and she takes the speak with plants spell and has a quick conversation with it, basically asking about like, hey, like I need to make a portal and travel through you now. And the sun tree lets her know that people make doors out of the trees, like we don't do it ourselves. But the sun tree's like, hey, if you learn how to do that, you know where I am. Fern then is like
McConaughey-esque.
Yes, it was so good to hear Matt do that voice again. She then asks the sun tree, like, you're old, right? And he's like, yep, really old. And she's like, were you around back when there was only one moon? And the sun tree said, no, like there's always been two since I've been here. And meanwhile, Laudna, is inspecting that ring that Vex gave her, and they're like, oh, let's give Laudna all of her stuff back. And so Imogen is trying to give her back the Bloodwell vial, but Laudna tells her to just keep it, like she could use it more than she can now. Imogen then is like, okay, she tells everybody about her dream and decides to send a message to Eshteros, and she's worried about him. And she basically just says, like, are you alive? I had a dream. Please respond. But there is no response. Waits, nothing. She's then like, okay, we got to get back to Drusar. But the party's like, well, we don't know what time it is there. I think it's really early. Like, maybe he's just asleep. And so they're like, okay, maybe. They're like, well, wait, how do we even get back? And so then they remember Manaya Ture, who was Estros's friend that owed him a favor. And they're like, let's talk to her. Maybe she can portal us back. But let's wait a little bit just in case it is too early. And that's why, Estros didn't respond. So they have some brunch. And then as they're kind of like exiting the castle, they see Vex practicing at the archery range nearby. So they go speak with her again really quick, and Chetney's like, oh my gosh, that bow you have is amazing. By the way, I'm a master craftsman. If you or the castle ever need anything, like, let me know. And he kind of takes that moment to showcase his skills and gives Imogen her gift that he's been working on, which is like this finely crafted wooden horse. Ashton then asks, like, hey, are there any stores nearby? We kind of need to like restock before we head out. And Vex is like, a lot of people are prepping for the Apogee solstice, but like, give me a sec, let me go check. And while Vex leaves them for a moment, F.C.G decides to reach out to Manaya Ture. They say, hey, we need transportation from the Sun Tree and Whitestone back to Drusar. Can you please come get us in exactly 2 hours? And she's like, boom, yep, don't be late. Vex comes back and was like, hey, follow me. And she takes them to the Whitestone expansion of Gilmore's Glorious Goods. Gilmore's not in, but Jerry is there to take care of them. And Matt basically says, classic, that the shopping will basically take place off screen, so he can like prepare and like, present them what items are available. But so we might learn about what they actually bought in the next episode. But they do go ahead and pick up 3 greater healing potions, and Fern also purchases this little trinket that Jerry personally made. That's this little griffin toy that can fly around when a command word is spoken. After that, F.C.G actually heads off by himself really quick to go to the Changebringer Temple, which is the Horizon Temple, to meet with Guide Osley there. Because I think he asked maybe Percy if there were any Changebringer temples around Whitestone. F.C.G finds the temple, and he finds Osley, who is just this unassuming man, I think eating a bowl of yogurt like outside the temple. And F.C.G basically says, like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know my purpose. Like, I don't even really know why I'm here, but I'm here. And Osley's like, many people are drawn here looking for answers. I can tell you're inexperienced with faith. And F.C.G's like, I'm inexperienced with everything. And Osley's like, you only need to open your heart and, be ready to hear the Changebringer's guidance. He's like, your confidence will grow as you walk the path, and each step you take will bring you closer. And in that conversation, he's actually like, roads are one of the most holy places for the Changebringer. So just feel free to, pray or talk to her on your travels, and she will guide you on the path. And there's like an offering plate to leave things. So F.C.G's like wants to leave something, but is unsure of what to leave. And Sam says, I leave the concept of F.C.G's flesh tongue. But then he also leaves some, I think, powdered incense and silver. And then he prays for the first time, saying that, I'll be listening and waiting and hoping to hear from you to let me know that, like, you're there. Mm-hmm. Party then reconvenes at the Sun Tree. At the appropriate time, they take the portal back through Jusar, opened by Manaya. She lets them know, hey, my favor's paid. See you later. The party then immediately head to Esdros's to check on him. They arrive at his house. Nothing looks off, but Imogen tries to send another message. Still no answer. F.C.G then casts Locate Creature, and this like golden thread points to inside the house as if he's in there. But they're like, okay, we should still be careful. So Chetney goes invisible, and Laudna is going to send Pate in to kind of scout. Chetney goes up, lockpicks the door. Pate makes his way in, starts scouting, can see that the place is kind of torn up. There's been a struggle here, blood on the ground, not looking good. Pate goes up the stairs into the bedroom and can see a body on the ground. And at this point, this information is conveyed to Chetney, so he starts following, again, still invisible, making his way into the room, and does, in fact, see the body of Esdras lying on the ground, hand kind of outstretched underneath the bed next to him. And Chetney can smell blood in the air, and he can tell that something's off. There's something wrong or just off about the blood. And he can also smell Otahan's blood. So presumably it was her that came in here and attacked him. He then looks under the bed to see what Esdras was reaching for and sees a little iron lockbox. I think he rolls a natural 1 on his check for trap. So he's like, oh, it's all clear. Grabs that. There's like a weighted plate that shifts, and a big heavy item falls on both him and the body of Esdras.
And now he's dead.
Yeah, and yep, he's gone. 2 death savings. So then he gets this box, tries to open it, but can't. Then he inspects Esdras's body and finds a key ring. One of the keys opens the box, and inside are a bunch of letters, and we'll talk more in depth about those in our discussion portion of the podcast. But for now, the most important one here is that one of the letters is addressed to the Bell's Hells. I'm going to run through that really quick. It says, my friends, if indeed you have this letter in your hands, then my fate has finally caught up to me. I have done many violent things in my life, some I'm proud of, and some I still deeply regret. I've already been running on stolen time. I feel the looming specter of recompense with every morning, and since our paths have intertwined, I chose to stare down directly without lament. I could assure that I embraced my end with aplomb and left a mark on my foe they will never forget. In our relatively brief time together, you have brought a light in the world so continuously ruled by... Okay, now I don't remember if I transcribed this wrong or if there were like maybe parts that were
Well, Travis, as he was reading, he was like,
Oh, that's right.
yada yada yada. Yeah, get to the good stuff.
That's right. That's right. Okay, I was like, wait, did I forget parts? So yeah, so they kind of Travis doesn't read the whole thing word for word. You and the late Bertrand Bell were the latest of these deeply appreciated encounters. With every step, I worried you had all stepped into matters far beyond your ability, foolishly marching into oblivion like I once had. I now know I was wrong. Those that twist the roads of history to their own dark ends want us to believe we can do nothing. They have no power in the face of such ancient, terrible machinations. I know they are wrong. True bravery is to stand in the face of fear and doubt and march ever on. True bravery inspires others to fall in line behind you and defy their illusions. You inspired me to fall in yours, and for that, I thank you. I have many debts to settle, gifts to dispense, now that my day is closed. Whatever sunset I may have been running from for far too long, I look forward to seeing Elia once more. I look forward to watching you all do great things from whatever realm calls me to rest. Remember me not just as a warrior, but as a friend. Friend in my own awkward way. Thank you. Now go stop. Now go stop this weird moon shit.
Yeah. I like that they're like, did he really say
that? And then also is included a recipe for his ginger cookies. And then finally a part of a will that actually wills to Bell's Hell's turmoil, his like weapon, but also the airship, including a full year of expenses paid for the crew to work it. So they're like, oh my gosh, Chetney, well, not they, Chetney's the only one that's reading this at the moment, but he takes that, makes his way back out of the house to fill in everyone else on what he's seen. He also makes sure to grab Esdros's walking stick on the way out, which is presumably Turmoil, the weapon. The party's like, we need to go somewhere safe and process and talk this out. So that's where the episode ends, but there's a brief moment that Orem kind of interjects and is like, I want to take a look at that cane. And he makes a medicine check and recognizes the toxin that he saw used on his husband and father-in-law that prevents resurrections. So Orem can kind of smell that toxin in Esdros's blood. And that's where the episode ends.
Our man Esdros. So that was episode 38, A Dark Balance of Campaign 3 of Critical Role. And if you're watching just the recap, click the link so you can see the whole video discussion. We want to hear what you have to say as well. Will, bro, what an episode, man.
Pour one out, man, for our boy Eric's.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we called it. We knew. We knew. We said it a long time ago that he's not long for this world. Took a little longer than we thought, but you know, the Pixelists, we always get our man.
Batting 100. We have never made any incorrect guesses. But
so,
man, bummed though. Like, that's our boy, you know, even though, you know, we did kind of feel like it was coming at some point. Sucks. And it also just kind of sucks that it was, you know, Bell's Hell's fault for kind of being the ones to reveal. I mean, their thoughts were detected, so it's not like they just gave up the name Esdros, right. But you know, inevitably their actions led to his demise.
Yeah, it's something that I wish I could have seen that encounter with Esdros.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you know, him just fighting through the house against Autohan, I just think it would have been so epic.
Oh yeah. All the traps and everything.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, you know, and I think we talked about it maybe after that episode that Autohan had done the telekinesis or done the detect thoughts, where we had said something like that. It has to happen because otherwise, you know, Chekhov's gun, like these traps have to go off at some point, you know? Yeah. So, but man, it still hurt. And, you know, Matt having the actual physical letter was such a nice touch. But yeah, their one source in Drusar now gone, and presumably, I mean, are they going to deliver the letters to each person, I wonder?
I think so. I mean, unless they like give them all to like
Mr.
or Laudna S.C.G or something, since they may trust her to do that. But
right.
Yeah, I want to talk about those letters because I have notes down of who each one was addressed to.
Okay.
But Yeah, just sad, man. And we do know at least that he made some comment in the note I just read about like my foe won't soon forget like a certain wound he left them with or something. So at least he presumably put up a good fight. And I can't wait to see like the next time we see Odahan if there's like some big scar across her face or like she's missing a
Yeah.
limb or something.
Yeah.
That would
Yeah.
just be cool.
Yeah. And I liked, maybe Laura Bailey said it, but they were like, are we still Bell's Hells, or now are we Bell
Oh
and
yeah.
Esteros's Hells? But I love, I mean, it sucks, it's tough, but I love how nefarious Odahan Thul is shaping up to be.
Yeah.
I mean, just like I can't wait till this person gets like obliterated, hopefully. So Matt's done a great job crafting the story points just to, ease in this character as a pretty despicable character. So, and
Yeah.
yeah, it seems like, using the poison has snuffed out any chance for Esteros to ever return. So,
Yeah, which I mean on the we've talked about like stakes and stuff a lot in our recent episodes. But what just an interesting new like mechanic to enter into the campaign, which spoilers but not really. Like that's never been in campaign 1 or 2 that like this thing that prevents resurrections in that way. Obviously there's other mechanics like already in the game where like the disintegrate spell kind of there's no body left, so some resurrections you have to at least have a body. So there are other ways that a similar effect has happened, but yeah, this poison is just super interesting because I mean they got lucky that in the first fight with her that she wasn't like ready. Presumably if we ever fight Odahan again, that poison's going to be good to go. So
well, yeah, I mean it's a bit of a Chekhov's gun in and of itself that we're getting so many breadcrumbs with it. It seems like the next encounter, I just envision her like holding her sword and just like coating it, and now
yeah.
everyone like immediately knows. Or it'd be a cool final moment where someone takes her own sword and like plunges it into her heart,
kills
or
her with
something.
it.
Yeah,
That would be sick.
And then Orm says, "No backsies for you." Maybe something a little bit cooler. I don't know.
But yeah, so full disclosure, when Chetney first walked in that room and Matt made the point of being like something smells off with his blood, the toxin wasn't even in my mind. The first thing I jumped to was one of the first things we talked about in like one of our first episodes of this, where we were like, is Esteros a vampire? And I was like, he's a vampire. That's why his blood smells different. Or, maybe not a vampire, but like he is something.
Yeah.
But now that we know the toxin, I feel like that's obviously what Matt was referring to. But I was really excited for a second.
Yeah. I'm sorry to say that I went straight to the toxin, but so yeah, I mean, Odahan presumably showing up at Esteros's place in the dark of night and taking care of maybe not loosen is the right word, but one of the biggest obstacles or pains in her side to whatever they have planned. We still don't know what's going on with the Broomstone, but we know that they're familiar with Drusar, at least, in it being like a central shipping place. How far are we from the Apogee solstice?
I think a month, a little under, maybe.
Yeah, which Matt pointed out that they had fought Thule just a few days prior. I don't know if it was actually a few days. I think they were towards the end of the Gentle Repose, which was I think 10 days. So it's been somewhere in that range, 3 to 10 days. And that was how many sessions ago? I guess a month ago, 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, or it didn't. Yeah, I don't know, because it doesn't feel like we had like an off week, right? So it feels like it was maybe 4 to 6 weeks ago, but maybe only like 3 sessions ago.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I guess we'll see how fast things transpire.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's a quick conversation we could have, because I was been wondering about this too. So we know that this week there is no episode. They're off. And then I think there will be an ep the first week of November, of campaign 3. But then that following week is the first of the Mighty Nine special. And then I think it's an off week for Thanksgiving, and then a second episode of the Mighty Nine special, and then another episode of campaign 3, which now we're in December. And if they're obviously going to take the last week of December off because it's Christmas as well as being the last of the month. So we only maybe have 3 or 4 episodes of campaign 3 left this year, which
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, let's do a little calendaring. So this Thursday they're off. The next one's the 3rd that they're on for. When does the Mighty Nine start? The 10th or the 17th?
The 10th, and then the 24th, because
24th is Thanksgiving.
Okay, so maybe it's
before Thanksgiving. The last Thursday of the month is Thanksgiving.
Okay. So I bet it's the first one is campaign 3, the second one's campaign 3, and then the 17th, I guess, would be part 1 of the Mighty Nine.
Okay. And then coming back in December 1st, part 2.
Yeah.
So yeah, the 8th. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 4 episodes, maybe 5. But yeah, that's crazy. How long are their breaks typically for like Christmas or like the holiday season? Do they take an extended break?
They usually do, I think, like a little bit longer than normal. But I guess since they're doing the whole last Thursday thing anyway, this time around, maybe it won't be as extended a break. I can't honestly remember off the top of my head. For all I know, maybe they're always right back. But I think they at least take off like the week after Christmas too, because that's usually New Year's and stuff. Like at the very least, it's a couple weeks.
Did you catch the detail in the session where they were like, maybe they were talking about like the airship or something, and he said something like, from this very place that you said goodbye to Dorian just a few weeks ago.
Oh, I actually didn't catch that.
Yeah, I was like, bro, a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it really is. Like time is so different from like the IRL time.
Yeah, it reminds me of in playing D&D in general, sometimes you'll have like, I think I had like 4 or 5 sessions in a row, but it was all in the span of one night.
Yeah.
But it was over like 2 months. And so it's weird how I guess time can just go by.
Yeah, for sure. And to that effect, I would imagine that there's no way we get to the apogee solstice before end of year. Like I doubt that happens before 2023.
I think what we're going to see is by the end of the year, them getting on the airship to go on to maybe Eos. Who knows? I don't know if I see that happening this next episode, because I see them kind of like wrapping up loose ends regarding Esteros, but possibly the one after that. But the point being, the airship, I would assume, is going to take maybe like a week's worth of travel wherever they're going.
True.
So that will move the story a little bit further towards the apogee solstice.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like Eos is probably definitely where they're going as soon as they wrap up their affairs in Drusar. It feels like that's where a lot of like the next threads are leading. So yeah, that's a great point, because I think it was probably at least a week's travel, which there and back, I mean, that's half the time toward the solstice. Not that they need to come back to Drusar, but yeah, that's interesting. So it's kind of sad that we only have like a handful of episodes left. Not that the end of the year is any impactful place to draw a line for any meaning or anything, but just it's I need my critical role, so I'm sad we don't have very much left this year. Man. But
I will say the last like 10 episodes, I feel like the campaign has really hit like a deep stride of just like every episode is, and there's been a little bit of critique of like certain gaps of like slowness. I've really enjoyed the whole campaign. I think we both have, but like these last like 10 episodes have really, I'm saying 10 generically, maybe last 7 or 8 have really felt the stakes have been there. It's
Yeah.
like, bro, what's gonna happen next time?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and we even talked about this in our recent episodes about kind of like the limbo and just like the high emotional stakes of, is Laudna dead? Is she coming back? And it kind of felt at the first half of this episode we were getting to kind of like breathe a sigh of relief, like they did it, they saved her, and then we're just
yeah,
immediately hit with this gut punch of Eshros is dead.
right.
So I was kind of hoping for maybe a little bit of a lightheartedness, but it seems like there might not be any room for that, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. When I was watching it and Imogen had her dream, and it was the Estros in the dream, and the moment she realized it wasn't Adahan, I was like, okay, well, would it be General Ratanish? Like who's like another warrior with like the Paragon's Call? And then like I wasn't following, and then when she was like, was that Lord Esteros? I was like, dude, no.
Yeah.
I've been through enough
Right.
just in the last few episodes. So he was a good NPC though.
He was. It kind of reminded me of old Bruce Wayne from Batman Beyond.
Yeah, that's a great way to think of it.
Kind of
For
mentoring
sure.
the next generation.
Yeah, a recluse,
Yeah. But okay, speaking of specifically the dream and Imogen seeing him, this is now the third time that we've seen this.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what exactly do we think this means? Because she doesn't see it for every time somebody dies. Like, she didn't see Laudna, which obviously there was the whole Laudna might be brought back situation, so maybe that's why she didn't. But other people have died, and we know it's not a proximity thing, which was one thing we were thinking about, because we know the Loomis twins and also Estros were worlds away when this happened. So I'm wondering, is it just, for the sake of telling a nice thematic narrative that, when it lines up this way, it's fun to kind of have these deaths appear in dream sequences, and we shouldn't look into it further than that? Or is there something more here? Are all these people she happens to see Ruidus-borns and connected to Ruidus in some way, just like she is? Is it because, we got the conversation about the divine gate, like maybe souls have to pass through the divine gate, and the divine gate's parallelism to Ruidus and Imogen's connection to that is letting her see this extra dimensional travel? Or what's your take on this, if you have one?
No, I mean, it kind of feels like column A a little bit, in the sense of like, I think what's interesting. So she knew Esteros, she knew Bertrand. They never actually met the Loomis twins,
Right.
when she saw the stream. So never met them. They had never met her. Didn't even know about her, as far as we know.
Right.
So it feels a little bit as like creative storytelling. I guess you could get into the weeds on like, is it a link to Adahan Thul? Is like the storm representative of like the greater evil that she represents, and it's sweeping up these major characters? But I think the point that you point out is that we don't see anyone else. I mean, presumably other people are dying
Right.
in this whole scheme, and so I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, the Loomis twins were the ones that kind of made me think about the Ruidus-born thing, because presumably they were, since they were so fascinated.
I think it was either heavily implied that they were, or outright stated that they were.
So that's why, like, maybe it could be a connection to there. But I'm just not sure. I do. As far as the Divine Gate, I still don't know what to make of it. If like, so we know the Divine Gate separates. It's like a dimensional barrier that humans can pass through, but deities cannot.
Right.
And so we're seeing it around Ruidus. I don't think that means like Ruidus is where all the gods are, and we actually, for better or worse, know that is not the case, because in previous campaigns there have been deities that have been interacted with, and they weren't on Ruidus. So I'm wondering if that's what the little barrier looked like, not because it's like the home of the gods, but it could be the home of some gods, but more so that it is not of this dimension. And so, similar to the gods locked behind the divine gate, Ruidus is behind the divine gate. Am I like making sense? Like, but they're
Yeah,
not one
yeah.
and the same necessarily. Like,
I
they're
don't.
just both
Yeah, I
behind
mean,
the divine gate.
I don't know if I agree, only because I think it's Percy or whatever they're talking to Percy and Vexalia about the divine gate. Either he or someone makes the point to mention, they talk about the divine gate, and then they say, now what's interesting about Ruidus is that it's here in Exandria. So like that, I think he even says like the divine gate we know was separating dimensions, but this is here. And so I don't know.
He doesn't know that though.
He doesn't,
You know?
and he doesn't know. He didn't even know it even was the case for Ruidus either.
Right.
But it's also Matt Mercer also the one dialoguing, so I don't know the expression for when you say something that you don't even realize you're thinking, but
Right.
I don't know. I'm not against that. I just was saying that's not where my mind went, is all I meant.
Yeah. No, for sure. What's interesting though is that Ruidus is in Exandria. You can see it up in the sky, but you can also see it in the Feywild, and those are two different dimensions.
True.
So it was in its own third separate dimension, maybe that's why both can see it, because they both just have with the apogee solstice coming up and the barriers between the places thinning.
Right.
Maybe that's why it's now showing up in the Feywild too. And I don't know why you could always see it in Exandria, but maybe that's just because that's where it originally was banished from or something. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of just rambling right now, but I just thought it was kind of curious that, I mean, we obviously knew that the lattice resembled the divine gate. But I felt like with Percy's comments here, we got a bit more confirmation that like it literally was the divine gate. So
it does. Well, not the divine gate, not the same one, right?
I mean, I don't know. The way I'm picturing it in my mind, which take that with a grain of salt, is that the divine gate just exists as a dimensional barrier. So like it exists at this point in space-time over here, but it also exists infinitely far in that direction over here. So like they're just like Ruidus is behind it, so you can see it around Ruidus.
Right.
But it also exists, where Pelor is in his realm.
It's like our ozone, basically.
Yeah. So like
So you can see like the moon over here, but there's also like Avernus or whatever other realms, over here. Whereas F.C.G likes to describe it, the flat Earth, and then it's above us or below us.
So that's my current understanding.
I could get behind that. I mean, it kind of makes sense that it is the one and the same. I also kind of like the theory we talked about several episodes ago on it being like a pre-divine gate, like these two gods that no one seems to know who they are. That which I think it's an interesting story point, by the way, that Matt has chosen not one god that was lost, but two. Like, I'm wondering the interaction there. That's very interesting. Because if I'm writing a story, I'd be like, the god that was forgotten, the god that was locked away. But he, for whatever reason, intentionally chose two, which I think is just interesting. So I kind of see it as like a pre-calamity. What we talked about from the source book. I can't think of it. Call of the Netherdeep. Two gods that were locked away behind a pre-early version of the Divine Gate, and it corrupts from its influence from a distance, or maybe post-calamity. I don't know. But
like a prototype. They did that for that reason then, and then later when they realized we got to step away from humanity, they're like, remember that time we did the thing with Ruidus? Let's do that again, but with us. So yeah, entirely possible that it's just not the exact same divine gate. But yeah, just so curious about the fact that she keeps seeing these people die, and maybe it's just simply because of what we've talked about. But also maybe, and I've touched on this at some point previously, if Ruidus and whatever gods or power are behind it is kind of like the antithesis to the Luxon. We've talked about how people in the Luxon faith can be consecuted, where their souls go get stored in these beacons.
Hurts me to bring
Maybe,
this up. I feel like you're messing with me. It's
maybe,
just so out there.
maybe these people's souls are being stored or passing through Ruidus via a similar mechanic, if you will, to
Yeah,
the
so
Luxon beacons and consecuted
yeah.
souls.
So that theory I actually do like, and I was thinking of something similar. And I don't remember if there was like a phrasing about maybe when Orm was asking for clarification on the blood on the staff. There was, and I need to go back and like, it's gonna be impossible to find this. So you guys, if you know what I'm talking about, let me know in the comments. His phrasing was so interesting because he said something about, it was like, yeah, this blood, it's familiar. It's, the toxin that seemed to like seal away or pull away or lock away. There was some kind of phrasing like that that was so interesting, but it made me go to what you're talking about. Like this antithesis of the Luxon, where these souls are being consumed by the storm and held and used for something nefarious. I don't know. And it also just in the world of like fantasy D&D, it wouldn't be the first time that there'd be something evil that's like, taking souls.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really great theory, and that's what I'm going to get behind as well. I don't think it's just like you're super dead, so you can't come back, but that something is happening to these spirits.
Yeah, I mean, that does kind of make sense, right? Like, if not to get too in the weeds on this, but mechanically, if we're thinking about, we've just talked about this with Pike, how like mechanically it works to res somebody, you go retrieve their soul. So if they
Right.
can't be resed, why not? If like
Yeah.
it maybe, because that's kind of sad, right? Like Estros and Bertrand and or not necessarily Bertrand. I guess he
We
probably
don't care
didn't
about
die
that.
to the toxin. I don't think Duggar, was that his name?
Yeah.
I assume he
Yeah.
probably
Right.
didn't have the toxin, but Will and Derrig and now Esteros, are they like being not necessarily tortured eternally, but like locked away eternally, not actually able to go to their afterlife? Like that's pretty depressing. But it would make sense mechanically for why they couldn't be rezzed.
Well, and there's been items that, store characters' souls. And since Matt has used a data point with the Luxon particularly, I think that's why I really like that theory. So we're gonna slap our official Pixelist stamp of approval on this theory. We're gonna ship it.
Boom.
And when it's correct, we're gonna tell you guys how right we were. And if it doesn't happen,
We'll
then
never mention it again.
yeah, I'll never talk about it. So great. I think it's a great theory. I'm definitely behind it.
All right, yeah. I mean, I'm hoping we find out more. Um, so as far as Divine Gate, Esteros, all of that jazz, are you good to
Yeah.
move on to the next thing?
Yeah.
One quick thing I wanted to mention in my notes. There's not really a good place to talk about this, but just no mercy, Percy, man. Those of you guys that watch campaign 1 know what I'm talking about, and like you probably even saw a little bit of this in the episodes you watched, but that was just kind of one of his nicknames. And I feel like that was just on full display, how there was like the literal army waiting outside, and Percy like had his sniper rifle basically ready to go. I just love that little like peek into his characterization for Bell's Hells to kind of see, but also for people that maybe didn't watch campaign 1 to see as well. So just love that like flavor moment of being included.
Yeah, and speaking of just that whole interaction, it was really interesting that Delilah was not actually removed from Laudna. We had theorized like what could happen. Is she going to come back? Would we even possibly see more of her? The fact that she's heavily reduced makes me wonder if she's turned her sights elsewhere. like for another means back to Exandria or whatever their plan is, but like still has like the door open to Laudna, or if Delilah has been actually in Sundering the Tree, her power, authority, whatever has been heavily reduced. I don't know, but surprised that she wasn't split. I kind of thought that's where the story was going.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of this, because was it Pike who originally, or was it like, did the words come out of Pike's mouth, or was Matt just kind of answering Marisha or the table when he said that, like, no, she's not completely gone?
It was Pike, because
Pike? Okay.
Pike says like, oh, she's still there, just heavily reduced. And someone says, but we killed her. And then Pike says, well, we killed her a bunch of times.
Yeah.
So.
And that was before the res, though, right? Like, that was like right when they got out.
Right.
So she says that, but then when they res Laudna, Pike does like the same thing she did to kind of F.C.G. when F.C.G. got to see their soul. It was like a similar moment where she was like checking and she's like, oh, it's Laudna. So we got like, she's still there, but also this like pseudo confirmation that, not that she was gone, I guess, but that at least this woman that's back here now is Laudna and not like Delilah putting on a ruse.
Right.
So it's I don't know, there's kind of a weird, like, is it okay to feel like we're good now, or is there still the possibility that something could go wrong,
Yeah, and maybe there just wasn't the space to like really digest it.
Yeah.
But it does feel like there's like a missing conversation there of like, can we trust Laudna with magical items? Like,
yeah.
And what I'm trying to find it, I can't find it in my notes. There was some point where they asked Pike a question too, and Pike was like, "Yeah," and then someone did like an insight check to see if she was lying, and they rolled like a 5, and they were like, "Yep, she seems pretty honest," but it almost felt like she was maybe lying on behalf of the party or something.
I think I remember that moment now, but I can't remember what it was. But
I don't know.
On this topic of,
I found it.
Oh, go ahead.
It's exactly what we're just talking about, like her spirit form, like her spirit essence. When she comes back, Laudna basically asks Pike something around like, am I wholly me, or was Delilah present? And Pike says, hey, it's just you, you're good. And then there's the insight check, and it's a 5. And I thought in that moment, like, is she just like, does Pike being Pike just want to like believe in the best of them and just keep their eyes set on like the right thing, or was she full on lying? Is kind of what I was wondering. So
yeah, okay, yeah, I remember that now. And it wouldn't make sense for her to lie, like,
well, because Vex had the bow and arrow,
right? So maybe she just didn't want Vex to kill her.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
But seemingly, if there was like a true threat, Pike would say something. But maybe like she did still like sense the presence, but maybe it's super diluted that Pike didn't want Vex to kill her. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely something to think about there. And on this, I was so on edge during like the next scene. I don't know if you felt this way. I was talking in the Discord when I was watching this episode, and at least the other people that were there at the time weren't getting this vibe, but I was. When, Laudna wanted to go touch the tree and feel it was warm, it was like, everybody come touch it. Like, Percy, come touch it. It wasn't like that, but that's how I was reading it. And then she even says, like, I put my hand on Percy's, and I was like, oh God, like, they're touching the tree. Like, that was Delilah's, like, phylactery, basically, in the nightmare zone. And I was like, is she, like, luring everybody to this tree to spring the trap? And I just kept getting those vibes, but then nothing happened.
There was definitely like a moment from Percy being like, I don't want to. He was like, come on, touch it. And you're like, okay.
So I also think it was just makes sense for there to be nothing into what I'm reading about. And it's just Laudna like processing and, being back and just wanting to like share this moment with everyone. Like, look, it's warm, because that's like new to her,
Right.
But it made me uneasy, and I was like waiting for the other shoe to drop. And then later, when they were going to bed, she's like, "No, let's go sleep next to the sun tree." I was like, "Oh, like, what's she gonna do?"
Enough about the sun tree.
But nothing
Stop
happened.
talking about the sun.
But all kind of leading into that conversation of, is Delilah still there? I'm kind of gonna be having these moments at times when she maybe does stuff that makes me a little sus. Is that Delilah, or is she still there?
Right.
But go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna. We talked about it last episode. Like, there's definitely like a carefulness of like, it's Delilah again.
Yeah.
You know, so I wonder if Delilah will pop up again before the end of the campaign, and also just in general, I'm a little confused as to what's going on with Laudna. Like, we talked about, what does this mean for Laudna? We had like the weird branchy thing happening when she touched the tree.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I was actually wondering, like, did her patron change? Like, what's happening? She also gave Imogen her Bloodwell vial, which gives her back the sorcery points, and was like, I don't really need it anymore. And she said Wither and Bloom like helps her with that or something, which isn't how it works. The whole thing was confusing. But my walk away from it was, was Delilah? We talked about Delilah being her warlock points or warlock levels. Is it possible that Delilah was her sorcery levels and she like rolled those over? I don't know. It was an interesting conversation because I didn't know if she was just being generous, like, you're probably gonna need it more than me, or if it was like,
or she like didn't need it anymore.
I actually don't need it anymore because I don't have sorcery points. So
that's really interesting. I hadn't even considered that angle.
But regardless, though, I'm like, what is going on with Laudna? What's the deal with Laudna?
Yeah, same. That's actually where I was going next, is that those moments with the sun tree that I just described, and then also the moment where her form of dread like became what it was.
Right.
Like, that's a lot of focus and intentional detail on the sun tree. So I'm wondering, is it her new patron? Is like the sun tree itself, and now of course I can't think of this when I'm trying to think of it, but the deity that like gifted the sun tree. I know Pelor is the deity that like Whitestone worships, but I think the sun tree was like another god's representation. I could be wrong, but it's kind of beside the point right now. Is that her new deity? Is it the sun tree? Literally, what's going on here? There seemed to be a lot of emphasis, especially with the change in aesthetic for her form of dread, that like surely that wasn't nothing.
It was definitely intentional to something.
Right.
Especially with how often she's described her form of dread. Something has happened there that I'm interested to see what that means.
And she certainly, to your point about like the sorcery levels versus the warlock, she certainly is still a warlock, because the ability that lets her have Pate as a familiar is a warlock one. It's the Pact of the Chain. So she has, unless she's like, I mean, who knows? Maybe it's something completely out of left field or homebrewed or whatever, but presumably that's where she's gotten the Pate familiar from, is from that pact, which is a warlock thing. Because
one of your choices with Pact of the Chain is an imp, which Matt clarifies later in the session that Pate is an imp.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was our confirmation that she still has her warlock levels for sure.
So presumably, unless there was some swapping action like you brought up, presumably she still has her warlock stuff. So new patron. Or like we talked about, maybe Delilah was never the patron and was just like the parasite type of thing you were talking about.
Yeah, that's interesting to me, because it was my idea. But I think the simplest route is Delilah was her patron. Delilah's gone. What happened to her warlock levels? She still has them. So could it be that actually maybe this dragon in front of the sun, we don't know, something else was her patron. She already was special, as Delilah pointed out, and Delilah parasitically, jumped onto that, subverted herself as the patron, but also coincidentally added the sorcerer levels.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, and maybe it even was brought up during the episode, but I didn't catch on to it. You know how they like flash the character sheets up?
Yeah.
I wonder if hers came up, what it said, if it said like, warlock, whatever, sorcerer, whatever.
And they might keep it as it is until like a big
until
story
there's a reveal,
like Travis with Chetney actually being a blood hunter instead of a rogue.
Right.
just such a great moment. But I don't know.
We'll have to keep an eye on it.
Probably all of our questions will get answered next episode.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, so yeah. What else do you want to talk about?
Just diving.
I'm kind of running to the end here.
Just diving through my notes really quick. Okay, there is just a couple things that I had notes on. One, really quick again, I cannot believe that Fern got Percy to make her a gun for her monkey.
Oh my gosh, how did I not mention this in the recap?
I thought that was hilarious, and she that was like one of the only good roles of the night. It felt like was her persuasion check there.
Someone watching like Exandria Unlimited or watching early of this campaign, and then like skipping and watching like I'm just gonna watch Critical Role tonight, and all right, monkey pulls out his gun and shoots. Be like, wait, what?
The gun key.
Drawing the line is just so funny to me.
Yeah, that was great. So I wanted to mention that. Too quickly, Esdras in these letters, I just wanted to run through the names that we actually heard. We got Evelyn West, which I believe is like that was
it's her steward.
Yeah, and clearly he was in love with her, I feel like, based on which we had been wondering.
Hang on. Are we talking about the person who, sorry, I thought Evelyn was the person who's like the assistant.
I think you're right, actually.
And then Elia, Edria, something. That's the one that, yes.
Okay, that's what I meant then.
Because he says in his letter, I'm going to go see her
now. Going to see her again, yeah. So we kind of have that question answered of why she gifted him her estate and everything. Right. So it was kind of nice to get that soft confirmation. But so Evelyn is his steward, like you said, or whatever. Lex and Minar, that didn't ring a bell for me.
I think that's new.
Okay. Yeah. Chief Wilder, Naman Oros, which I guess is just like the police chief of right, because the Wilders weren't those like the guards.
I didn't know what it was. I was like, are they from Wildmount? Like, what is that? It was way off.
And I should have, because we have a podcast, but I didn't actually like go look that up. But that's what I thought that was. So hopefully that makes correct.
Sense to me. Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting that, I mean, we know Esdras had his kind of fingers around and was trying to, make things better for the city. But it's interesting to know that like he had that direct contact with the chief, at least presumably. We have Ajit Dial, who that makes sense. Mistress Orlana Sasadri. Yep. And then Manaya Teray was one too, which obviously we knew they were friends and like she owed him a favor. But important enough to have one of these letters. And then Bell's Hells. And then there might have been other ones, but those were the only ones that were listed. So really I'm curious as to what the contents of each letter is. Not that I think they will read them, nor should they, but that Lex Eminar, since that's the one that I had no recollection of, I'm very curious who that is.
Yeah, and it's why I wonder if maybe the next episode will be why they won't be going anywhere next episode, but that they'll kind of be delivering these letters. I guess they could go to Mr. Shishadri and Orlana Shishadri and hand them off. But I think they're going to follow up with, hey, who is this person? Because ultimately, we know there's corruption in the city. We know that Esdras is working against it. But this is basically a list of people you can trust that Matt's handing them.
Yeah. So I would love it personally if they did kind of try to find each person and deliver them themselves. But I wouldn't be surprised if they just gave them all to Orlana.
Right.
Then the only other thing, at least that I have in my notes right now, that I at least wanted to touch on real quick was the Temple of the Changebringer and the F.C.G. Just curious for your take on this, because sometimes I read too much into things. The fact that he without a moment's hesitation was like Smiley Day. I was like, is that like a thing that Changebringer people say?
But no, did you rewind to see if he? I guess we couldn't rewind. I need to go back to the YouTube VOD. I need to see if he said it when he got there. Because when she said Smiley Day, I was like, did he introduce himself with that? Or did this person just like in a weird spiritual way? You know what I'm saying? I picked up on the exact same thing.
So I don't remember who said it first, but even if F.C.G. said it first, he said it with such like comfortability immediately.
Yeah.
That I was like, is this like a thing? Which would be such a cool, like, if it was a thing. So I was wondering that, and I'm glad you kind of picked up on that too.
Well, and I personally have to wrap up here, but I just want to say on that detail, I love just the story nuance of F.C.G as the soulless robot being the party member indulging in spirituality and religion. It's just kind of like a nice irony, I feel like.
He has a soul, by the way.
I know
what you're saying.
So
should we just do the thumbnail real quick? Do you gotta like
I got like 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay, then that's all I need. The only other thing about just the Changebringer and kind of how this maybe is interconnected through the story as a whole. We have briefly talked about Elixion at times on this podcast, and hey, we have a TikTok if you're interested more about Elixion and what I'm about to talk into more in depth.
TikTok.
It's actually 3. There's 3. Yeah. Check that out because I don't have time to go over it right now. But the Pixelists on TikTok is where you can find it.
Right.
But Elixion, for those of you that don't know, was this hero. He battled Grumpsh, which has been referenced in recent episodes with that cult. Anyway, he is sleeping underneath, not Drusar, on Corel, deep in like another plane. Anyway, he's kind of trapped there, and he was a champion of 3 gods. The Changebringer is one of those 3. And one of like the famous artifacts he had back when he was like this legendary hero was called the Jewel of 3 Prayers, which 3 prayers for each of the 3 gods. Anyway, the Changebringer is one of those 3 gods. I'm wondering if, and this part's kind of unrelated to the theory as a whole, but like the 3 things on F.C.G's thing, I'm wondering if there's some sort of relation there. But the part of the story of Elixion and this jewel is that like it's calling out to heroes like to ultimately go help Elixion. So what if part of F.C.G's story was ultimately that like they learn about Elixion and all this lore, given how it's surrounding the campaign in a way, and they either got to go find the Jewel of 3 Pairs and then go help him, or I don't know. I'm just wondering if that could potentially be a facet of his story later on.
Bro, I'm like in the dark. I didn't even realize the Changebringer was one of those deities. So that's a massive like connection with the story.
And what's interesting is another one is the Moonweaver, which Ruidus having to do with everything in this campaign as well. And plus, obviously, we know Elixion's connection to Ruidus.
All right. Something for us to stew on for our next meeting. We got to do a quick thumbnail, and then I got to go.
Any ideas?
Adult stuff. I don't know. We could do something related to Estros or Laudna. Either like yay or
how about one of us is yay and the other one's sad?
Okay. Which one do you want to be?
I'll be sad.
Okay. All right.
Nice.
I feel like it's going to look like I'm just bullying you or something.
Perfect.
All right, guys. But don't forget to check us out on Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, whatever. On YouTube, we're the Pixelists YT. On Twitter, we're the Pixelists. And on TikTok, what's our handle?
The Pixelists.
You can check us out and let us know what you thought about the episode. We want to hear about it. Stay tuned later this week for our Rings of Power. Should you watch it? We're going to be talking about it on the podcast. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you later.
Bye, y'all.